The B.S Report is a free-flowing conversation that occasionally touches on mature subjects.
First of all,
This is the B.S Report with Bill Simmons.
it might be cool, I don't know. And if it's not, I don't care.
The B.S Report with Bill Simmons.
Bill Simmons works for ESPN. He's also named the sports guy, and he writes a comical sports column. He must be a popular dude.
The B.S Report.
It's got a real dirty sound, like a rusty steak knife cutting through a well-aged steak.
Now.
Here's Bill Simmons.
Welcome to the B.S Report, taping this on a Monday afternoon. It's going to run a little bit later in the week on the Subway Fresh Tech Hotline right now. One of my ESPN.com colleagues, LZ Granderson. What's happening?
What is up, Bill?
This shouldn't have been the first time that we're doing this, and I apologize because Joe Meade doesn't book my podcasts, and I don't really have a professional booker, so this should have happened sooner.
Oh, well, no problem at all. I listen to the podcast. Obviously, I read your column, and I was just waiting one day to be christened. So
Yeah.
I'm happy that this day is here.
People take it personally sometimes when I don't ask, and they don't realize that I'm just absent-minded and I don't keep track of the stuff. But something happened last week that made me say, you know what, it's time. LZ has to make an appearance. We had a columnist at the Boston Herald named Steve Buckley who wrote a column that basically said, I'm gay. And that's really all it said, which I thought was a little weird in 2011. I can understand that column being written in 1998 or something. But in 2011, kudos to him on the one hand for coming out, but on the other hand, I kind of expected more from the column. Now, you've been out for a while. You're openly gay. You've been writing a bunch of columns for ESPN.com on this subject. In 2011, is it enough just to write a column to come out and say, I'm gay?
Well, to those of us who may be further along in the discussion of sexual orientation and our culture as a whole and sports specifically, it probably didn't do a whole lot. But keep in mind that is not the entire segment of the entire makeup of the U.S. population.
Right.
And so I am certainly sure that his words, touched someone who needed to hear those words. It's easy to think with Glee and everything else that we're moving to a rosier place, but it's not like that. And it was evident during the debate discussion during the final few days of Don't Ask, Don't Tell that we still have a long ways to go in terms of talking about sexual orientation in a rational way. And so I was happy to see that he did that, and I'm happy that he finally felt comfortable enough to share that part of himself.
So, are you saying basically it's like baby steps? Every step's a good step. Doesn't matter who takes it or what's said. What matters is that the step happened.
I would definitely agree with that because you just never know where anyone is at any given point. And I'd like to use myself as an example. I was in the closet as a sports fan for a number of years. I was openly gay, but because I had not seen a great deal of images of openly gay men in sports, I kind of kept that part of myself in the closet to my gay friends.
Right.
And it wasn't until a magazine that's no longer actually in publication called Hero had a cover story that featured a black guy with a basketball in his hand. Hero was a gay publication. And so I'm looking at this, and there's a black guy with a basketball. And I'm like, well, that wasn't me. Well, who took this photo?
Right.
And I looked into it, found out there was like these leagues that happen all around the country and tournaments where sexual orientation wasn't an issue. And I got plugged into that community, and that really kind of led me coming out of the closet as a gay sports fan and as a gay sports enthusiast. So you never know what step Buckley's step is going to lead someone else to take.
Right. And for you, it sounds like you were out in your private life, basically, and then people around your life started to know about it. But when did you write your column telling people, hey, by the way, I'm a gay sports writer?
I never did.
Just you worked it into some column? Do you remember what year it was?
I never actually had a coming out column. And, it's funny, when I got your email, I started thinking about that. I was like, I never did that. I never wrote I am gay column.
Right.
Normally,
How come?
I didn't think it said anything. That was for me.
Yeah.
I didn't think it was important to any story that I was telling at that particular time. Even during the periods in which, I think the first piece that I wrote that dealt with the issue, I want to say it was like 98. Allen Iverson had a rap CD come out.
Are you going way back?
Yeah. I've been writing about this for a while.
Okay.
Allen Iverson had his rap CD come out, and he was in trouble with David Stern because it had a lot of homophobic slurs in it.
Yep.
And that was the first time I had written a piece about it. And even within that, I didn't think my sexual orientation in that discussion mattered because the principle stood regardless of the sexual orientation of the author.
Mm-hmm.
So the first time I actually wrote a piece that had I am gay in it, it may have been the time in which I was gay bashed in New Orleans during the
I remember
All-Star
that.
Weekend.
2008.
Right.
You're going to the Playboy party, right?
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And my T-shirt didn't reach my knees. And so they thought my T-shirt was too small. It was a large, by the way.
Yeah.
And, the guys started circling me, and, I was getting ready to scrap, and whatever happened. Unfortunately, the police officers were nearby and kind of broke up the situation. But when I wrote about that, I think that was the first time I wrote a piece that focused so much on my sexual orientation. But for the most part, I'm a sports columnist for ESPN. I write for CNN, and in both those cases, it's about what's going on outside of me, not about me.
Right. What was your reaction to that New Orleans story? I mean, the reaction from the readers.
From the readers, it was a lot of sympathy, which really wasn't my goal. To have people say, "Oh, we're sorry that happened to you." It was more to remind people that we're not where we think we are. We're not where PC language leads us to believe we are.
Yep.
And what happened to Matthew Shepard wasn't an isolated incident. These incidents are still happening, as we just saw in Brooklyn not too long ago. And so a lot of people felt bad that happened to me, but I was really hoping just to get people just aware of where we actually are and not where we hope to be.
And, it's been an amazing 20 years. I remember I had a family member that came out, I think, in 1990. Mm-hmm. And at that point, it was, I think, just a much bigger deal, not just within our family, but just in general, like just the shock and surprise of it than I think it would be in 2011 if you had a family member come out. And then you think of some of the stuff that happened in the 90s, like Melrose Place, they wouldn't show the two guys kiss.
Right.
Magic Johnson goes on Arsenio, and there's rumors flying around that Magic might have gotten HIV from, a homosexual encounter, and Arsenio asks him about it, and Magic says, I got to tell you, I'm not gay, and the crowd starts applauding.
Right.
So when you think we were at that place, not that long ago, it was within 20 years to where we are now, I'd still say we're in a significantly better place, right?
Well, absolutely. And anyone who tells you that we're not is probably making a living keeping that tension alive.
Right.
We are in a much, much better place, and not just in terms of sexual orientation, but just in terms of the overall conversation of otherness, right?
Yep.
1990, do we see a black president coming over the horizon? I don't think so. Do we see women making the advancements in politics and in business the way they have at this point? I don't think so. So I think in terms of overall otherness, we've come a long way over these past 20 years. But that is still a long way from saying we've arrived. And so, our job as journalists, as columnists, as writers is to be the litmus test, to continue to have a agenda focus in terms of telling the stories, but just telling the real stories, saying exactly where we really are, and not letting hyperbole on either side, stress the truth or stretch the truth.
And in 2011, I'm starting to wonder if it's actually a good career move for the right kind of athlete to come out. And I'm going to throw this at you. Tell me if you agree or disagree. Let's say it's somebody who's, an outfielder or a running back who's like 31, maybe in the last third of their career. They're not a superstar, but they've been an all-star once or twice. You know who they are. They've made a ton of money. and all of a sudden they decide, you know what, I'm coming out. Wouldn't that, from a career standpoint, first of all, that guy is now a hero, I think, in the community for coming out and having that conviction and being the first active athlete to do that. And then secondly, from a marketing standpoint, when you think of like the book that guy could write, maybe that guy gets an ad or two. That's certainly a much different climate than it was, say, in 1990. Do you see that happening in the next 2 years?
I don't necessarily see I don't see a male in the top 3 sports coming out as a career move. I still believe that the stigma is in place in which it was seen as a career killer. And so if they... Really?
You think that would actually really legitimately hurt somebody's career?
Well, here, you're talking about what? How many... Look at, for instance, let's back up, right?
Yeah.
Where's John Amici right now?
Yeah, but he did that, his career was over at that point.
Right?
Yeah, true.
I mean, do you know where he is? And let me tell you, I've been around a lot of athletes in my life. A lot. As so have you. I cannot recall being encountered with someone as observant, as intelligent, as intellectually gifted as John Amici. And if there's anyone that should be on television doing any sort of sports commentary about the NBA or sport that he's played, I would think John Amici would be in that conversation based upon his communications style and the fact that he has played the sport. And yet we have no idea where this man is.
And now, part of me wonders if because, he said some really, really unflattering stuff about Jerry Sloan, if people within the NBA circles felt like he broke the code to some degree. You think that's like a small part of it, or maybe not?
I mean, I severely doubt it. You know how many codes get broken and
true
and repatched over the years. There are people who I see in positions of authority that I didn't think would ever hold another position of authority ever again.
Right.
The simple fact that Isaiah Thomas is a coach at a college campus after going through such a horrific sexual harassment lawsuit blows my mind.
Right.
So, I mean, I think that we have plenty of examples of people breaking codes and doing what we think is the unthinkable and yet still finding a way to land on their feet. And I honestly believe that because when someone of like a John Amici comes out, there are still too many dogmatic people in places of leadership and decision-making that aren't capable of seeing anything beyond that person's sexual orientation. And so he no longer becomes the ex-pro who's really smart and funny and observant. He's the ex-gay pro or the ex-pro gay or the gay ex-pro. So gay is the first thing that they see, and they start wondering, well, will our audience relate to a gay person? I don't know, it's controversial, and then it starts this slow decline to just obscurity. And so it would take the motivation of just simply wanting to move the conversation forward to prompt someone to come out while they're still active. They wouldn't be doing it because they can better their career. They'll be doing it because they want a better society.
So it would have to be somebody who was legitimately socially conscious, who put a ton of thought about their place, not just at that moment, but how, moving forward, how that would affect just the discussion, the landscape, everything. Mm-hmm. And somebody would be doing that not to write a book or not to get whatever would come out of the attention, all that stuff, but really honestly just to move the discussion along.
Right. If they're doing it in a completely calculated way, then yes, that would be the way. It wouldn't be for some sort of financial gain. Now, I tend to believe, sadly enough, because of the way that our media works and social media in particular, that what's more likely to happen is that the person gets outed.
Yep.
And that turns on into a different take into how that individual will then construct what happens with their career over the next couple of years if they've been forced out. Because all of a sudden now they're not only dealing with the public response to them being openly gay, but they haven't had time yet to process what it means for them to be openly gay because that decision has been made for them.
And that obviously not the same type of thing, but I think a good parallel to that was what happened to Arthur Ashe, where he had HIV, his family didn't want it to come out, and a newspaper caught wind of it, and they wrote it, and they basically forced his hand. Mm-hmm. We haven't seen that happen to an athlete yet, and this is something I've always wondered about. Like, let's say I'm a 6'8" basketball player and I'm gay. Mm-hmm. How do I meet people? Like,
you meet people.
Well, I'm saying you can't. Your options are a little limited for what you can do and where you can go and stuff like that, though, right? Or am I naive?
Well, without divulging too much of my, understanding of the underbelly of life, there are certainly ways in which, people can meet interesting people without having to do so publicly. So, no, you're not going to necessarily go into a club, but you can always find a house party or some sort of organized party in which you can do something like that. You can meet people.
Yeah, but I'm saying, the life of an athlete, you're on the road all the time. You're in close circles. You got 11 other teammates. Everybody kind of knows what everybody else is doing. It would seem like it just wouldn't be that conducive.
Well, one of the things I always try to tell the closet athletes that I know, and this was definitely true when I was younger, was that, I see the athletes, and we all see them out and about, and they're pretty free to date and do whatever they want and kind of have the world eating out of their hands. And it's like, and here you are, locked up in your room, scared to open the door because someone may look in your room and see something flung on your bed and think you're gay or something. I mean, so you're really not enjoying all of the fruits that being a professional gay athlete, could enjoy, in a responsible way, of course. And they see that. They see that they are missing out on, not just, picking up whoever you want to pick up in the bar, but I mean just being able to go out and have, dinners in fancy restaurants or comfortably, right?
Yeah.
And not wonder if you're going to run into someone you may have met at a private party and then have to do some explaining. But also just, the parties that you may want to go to. I mean, what if you did want to see freaking Lady Gaga? Now you don't want to because,
right.
She's the new freaking Madonna, or she's the old Madonna, or I don't know, whatever the heck you want to characterize her.
Well, when it you never wrote the coming out column, but it became clear at some point to people that you were openly gay.
Yeah.
How many athletes have come up to you and just said, hey, can I pick your brain on this? Or, hey, can I talk to you confidentially? Is that something that happens to you?
Yeah. Yep. I would say that I am associates with, I don't necessarily call them friends because I don't feel that we are friends.
Yeah.
But I have earned their trust, and so I do know a handful of men in the big three sports who are closeted, who at time to time have reached out to me, sometimes just to blow off steam, sometimes ask for advice. There was one point at which I thought an athlete was going to come out because they found themselves in a relationship and just wanted to just be in a place where they could, have that relationship without the added burden of secrecy. That individual has yet to come out, and so I don't know what impact that his relationship has had on him opting not to come out. I don't know if he's just decided in and of himself that he wasn't going to do it. But, I am, have been used as a resource, if you will, to closeted athletes.
And what kind of counsel do you give?
What I really remind them is that despite all of the social pressures to keep your life a secret because somehow it's supposed to be different than everyone else, the fact of the matter is that there really isn't a whole lot of difference, if any at all, between being in a relationship with someone of the opposite sex or someone of the same sex. There just isn't. We all deal with the same crap in terms of moments of insecurity, decision-making, sometimes wanting your freedom, life decisions in terms of, where we're going to spend the next 10 years of our lives. I mean, all these decisions that every heterosexual couple, married or girlfriend and boyfriend makes, you also make if you're in a gay relationship. And so when you focus in more on those connectors and less on, the supposed big, huge difference between the two, you feel more at ease about who you are as a person.
Right.
I have never really been one to really subscribe to any of these preconditioned notions of what a gay person is supposed to be. And there's no reason that anyone has to follow in any of those, predetermined roles, regardless of your sexual orientation. If anything, 2011, this should be a year in which we become more comfortable just being who we are in our own skin and not trying to follow someone else's rules.
What happened on the Grey's Anatomy set a few years ago with T.R. Knight when Isaiah Washington called him a slur and it became a big story, and there was so much vitriol, not toward T.R. Knight, but toward Isaiah Washington, and actually probably killed his career, which made me think, at least that's opened the door that if an athlete did come out and somebody, slurred him or whatever, isn't it safe to say that that same vitriol would be heaped on the person who slurred him?
Well, let's ask ourselves a couple of questions. Where is T.R. Knight right now?
Ooh, that's a good question. Well, I mean, there's been lots of people who have left a hit show and have never been heard from again. You could argue that maybe it wasn't a great idea for him to leave that show.
I hate always going with the where is he now kind of thing, but you always got to ask yourself, we love Ellen now, but it took her a long time to rise from the ashes.
Yep.
From that, and so you do wonder, and there certainly have been recent conversations, Rupert Everett, Richard Chamberlain have both talked about how difficult it still is for an openly gay leading man to land roles.
Yeah. And
so even though you're absolutely right, Isaiah Washington's career suffered, tenfold in comparison to, where TR is right now. But the fact of the matter is that, people still aren't casting TR in the next big series.
I would say that Neil Patrick Harris emerged the best out of anybody ever with it.
Well, he's one of those cases in which talent really won over.
Yeah.
And it's a beautiful thing to see. I didn't watch the People's Choice Awards, but I did see the clip where he kissed his partner David before going up on stage. And I thought that was perhaps one of the most significant moments in television in the past couple of years, where you had a genuine moment of affection between two people who loved each other, and not scripted stuff from like reality TV or, some, bad television show. That was just a genuine moment of two people who love each other celebrating.
Yeah.
And I thought those are the moments that I talked about earlier that signifies how alike we are. Right, you wouldn't think twice if David was his female companion and he kissed her on the cheek in celebration. So you shouldn't be thinking twice when he does it and it's his partner who happens to be male, because it comes from that same place of happiness and wanting to share that happiness with the person you love.
And I don't watch Glee, but they had a similar moment on that show, right? Didn't they have a character?
Yeah, I don't watch Glee either.
Yeah.
I can't stand that show.
But it seems like pop culture-wise, people now use like the gay moment or the gay, like I remember the OC did this where Marissa kissed whoever, they had the lesbian kiss, coming up this week. It almost seems like the TV shows kind of use that now as like a ratings gimmick. Sometimes.
I think they use it as a ratings thing. I think they also use it as a way to help with their direct marketing to the demographic.
Yeah.
If you already are aware of the fact that you have a large, base that, wants to see this sort of relationship on your show, and marketing that is all just part of the way to, keep the advertisers connected to your show by showing them good numbers.
Right. I got to talk about the WNBA here. I just think we have to, because this is a league that I think the players are basically out, whether it's, 10, 15, whatever, and they're not famously out. They're not, touting it, but I think it's pretty known that there's some that are out. And then who they are targeting the tickets to, it went from they're trying to target NBA fans to now they're targeting dads with daughters, and it seems like the gay community. And those are the two demographics that they're trying to hit. And we haven't really had any issues with that. I mean, why progress there and why not progress with the big three?
Well, I think you have to look at how you're defining progress.
Okay.
There are several baseball as well as basketball teams. In fact, your favorite team has a gay night now, in which the teams, the franchises, are directly marketing certain celebratory nights to the gay community.
Right.
You know, baseball's been doing that thing for like a decade or something. So that, to me, represents growth, right?
Yeah.
And then you also have to look at the fact that because of the assumptions about female athletes anyway, that it's somewhat of an easier conversation to broach because of our limited view, it tends to be somewhere in the back of the culture psyche that if you're a female athlete and you're really good, there is a chance you are. And so that's always floating back there anyway. So to talk about the conversation isn't as shocking to what we have accepted as cultural norms as, say, a male athlete who's really good who happens to be. That would kind of throw us off a little bit.
Yeah. It seems like they've definitely embraced it.
Well,
I'll use that word more than they did in 1998.
I was going to say, it took them a while, though. It definitely, took them. And I'm not sure if they didn't do it because it was the only thing they had left because everything else was failing or not working out quite as much as they had hoped.
Right.
Or that they finally have grown up and said, hey, gay people have money too.
Yeah.
Like most studies suggest that gay community has more expendable cash than their heterosexual counterparts, and so maybe we can even bilk them for even more money than before.
Right. Well, I know like the OPGA has that Dinosaur Classic that has merged into almost a cultural event.
Right.
At the same time, I can't remember when it is, but I think it's like late January or early February or whatever. And it's jokingly called to in that community as the lesbian Super Bowl. And people descend down on Palm Springs, and they do the whole thing. And that's something that has stayed relatively underground for the most part. I didn't even know about it until I saw it on a reality show. So,
which reality show were you watching?
The real L Word. I can't even say it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I
which
saw episodes of that.
Yeah, it wasn't bad.
I'm really bad with reality shows. I gotta, I just saw.
You got to bone up.
Well, I just saw Snooki for the first time, and I was completely blown away.
Oh God. Yeah, everybody remembers when they saw Snooki for the first time.
I was like, holy cow.
And now they've cloned her. She has a new roommate that looks exactly like her. It's pretty funny.
Oh my God, is that possible? Well, I guess you can put orange on anybody, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's how it works. You've been in Michigan pretty much your whole life, right?
Yep.
Where does this rank among the abysses for the sports teams there?
Where does what?
Just this in general. What's going on?
This conversation?
No. This just how the four teams are doing right now.
Man, there's a lot of nervousness in regards to what's going to happen with Michigan.
Explain. Explain.
Well, I mean, there's no Rich Rodriguez.
Yeah.
So who are we going to bring in? Is it Les Miles? Harbaugh's gone. He's going to San Fran. So, I mean, really the bulk of the conversation is focusing on who's coming into Michigan and are we really going to pull the trigger with Rip and this Carmelo Anthony trade proposal.
Yeah.
Those are the two conversations. The Wings are doing fantastic and no one's talking about them, unfortunately. But they're having an amazing season. But right now it's all about Michigan football and we're used to State kind of floundering a little bit this part of the year and getting it together in time for the tournament. So their losses, while not welcomed, they're hardly anything new at this time of the year.
I'm totally confused. I admittedly don't follow college football that extensively, but to fire a coach after 3 years makes no sense for me, especially when this guy was the hot candidate 3 years ago. You bring him in, you figure it takes, and I know other people have said this, but you figure it takes 2 years to at least get, your system and your philosophy in place, all that stuff, then you're recruiting, things like that. It would seem like you wouldn't even know if the guy is right for the job until like year 5.
Well, there's a couple of things with Rich Rod that was working against him before he even got there, right?
Yeah.
Like first, Les Miles was the guy. He had to back out because news got out before that bowl game. Rich was actually like their third, maybe fourth choice for the job to begin with. So, that was, one problem.
I thought he was, am I remembering that wrong? I thought he was like a hot candidate.
Oh, he was hot. He definitely was hot. I think he was 11-1 the year that they hired him. I mean, he was definitely hot, but the guy they wanted was Les.
Right.
And Rich, I think, was third. I forgot who was number 2 on the list, but he was either third or fourth, actually, which leads you to believe that they knew instinctively that he, despite being, hot at the moment, may not have been the guy, which is why he was so far down on the list.
Yeah.
But they kept hearing no, so they finally got the choice that said yes. And then you quickly found out why there might have been some hesitation, because he butted heads with, some key alums and the things that he would say in the meetings. Then he had that press conference in which he suggested that, some of the Michigan fans need to get a life because they weren't happy with the losses in his first year.
You can't say that.
You just can't say that.
You can't tell people who don't have a life that they don't have a life. They take it personally.
As well they should, because in their minds, they are paying your salary.
Yep.
Whether that $30 ticket actually matriculates and finds its way to your bank account is a different conversation, but
right.
That's what they're thinking. We pay your salary, so how dare you talk to your boss like that?
Right.
But then the other thing, too, is that, and this was my problem with Rich, was that this was the team that had a lot of the pieces, not none of the big name stars like Henny and Mike James, I think his name is, the running back now with Indianapolis.
Yep.
Mike Hart. Mike Hart is his name. Some of those guys were gone, that following year, but they had Ryan Mallett, and. I believe that if you are coming to a new program, just like you would with a new job, and you happen to be the new CEO, you kind of work with what's in place and slowly implement in what you want to do, those changes you want to make, if what happened before you got there was working. And considering that Michigan had just won a bowl game in Lloyd Carr's last year, had just beaten Tim Tebow in that bowl game, coming in and totally gutting the pieces that were in place and forcing Michigan fans to go from a bowl to 3 wins, that wasn't good.
And then
that was hard. And then to come back and only have like 5 wins, and most of those wins weren't very convincing. It came in the final seconds. And then you get an NCAA investigation. I mean, it just wasn't turning out to be a very pretty story, and his name was on the top of so many worst ever lists within Michigan now. Worst ever bowl loss, worst ever season, worst ever coaching tenure for 3 years. I mean, it's.
And then the other thing is, once the locals get it in their head that you're going, it's almost no coming back, because I still think he deserved 1 more year, but the whole next year would have been dominated by, why did they bring him back? When are they going to fire him? And it almost like overshadows the entire season itself.
Right. And to be honest, I mean, much of that was happening last year. There was, if you remember the pattern of the national press surrounding his last year there, it started off with this investigation of the NCAA, right?
Yeah.
And people were pressing and wondering if that was enough to fire him. And then I think they ran off maybe 5 in a row. I think that Michigan State game, they were both 5-0 at the time. And so that kind of died down, because it was like, well, he's winning. Let's get behind him. Let's not press this whole he's being fired thing, because now we're 5-0 heading into Michigan State, our rival. Well, we lose that game. We go on to lose several more games. And then the wheels completely fell off. And then you started hearing that drum again about the NCAA investigation, and you knew by halftime that game with Mississippi State that was his last game. You just knew The team just looked completely overmatched. The defense, which had been just absolutely atrocious the entire season long, was just at its worst I had ever seen it in terms of pass coverage. And so you just knew at that point that he wasn't going to last. And then by the third quarter, when they got 40-some points on you, then whatever.
Right. And then the Lions, even though they didn't have the greatest season, they finished 13-3 against the spread, so that was progress.
You know what? Whenever I think about the Lions, I wrote a column, I want to say like 2 years ago now, in which, before we drafted Stanford, I think, and it was like, we need to get Mike Vick. And I felt we needed to get Mike Vick, one, because his body was still fresh. Two, if nothing else, he would bring excitement back to the Detroit Lions and make us relevant, if for no other reason than a discussion. But then three, if he was, half as good as he was in his heyday in Atlanta, that's still 100% better than all the options we had prior to him being there.
Right.
So, as I'm watching, him toss that interception last night in the closing seconds, and I'm going, God, that's really the sucky way to end your season, very Favre-like. But, heck of a season. Heck of a season. It's like, damn it, you could have been a Lion.
Well, at Stafford, people now wondering whether they're just ever going to see this guy healthy?
You got to start wondering that. There's certain players who are just more injury prone.
The Brittle Club.
Yeah, there's something about their physiology that just makes them all Greg Oden.
Yeah.
And you see other players, take hits, like a LaDainian Tomlinson. It's like, how is this guy still running?
It's true.
But,
some people are just built to play sports for 15 years at a high level, and other people aren't. Like, I watch Andrew Bynum run, and I feel like he's not going to be in the league in 6 years.
Yeah. And it's too bad, right? Because the guy, Kupchak was smart in keeping him.
Yeah.
When he's in there, he's, an active. He's a handful.
The Pistons sale, which I think has been going on for, 20 years at this point?
At least 20.
It's going to happen
the bad
now.
Boys.
It's going to happen, but it's almost like the Artest melee just kind of killed the team itself. They made the finals the following year, but eventually they've just never really been the same since that night. Now it's, I don't know what to make of the team they have now. And it looks like if they facilitate this Carmelo trade, it's basically the 2004 Pistons 6 years later with Carmelo instead of Darko, which is kind of weird. I want them to re-sign Rashid if they do that, the Nets. But were you ever worried at any point that the Pistons would actually get bought by somebody who tried to move them, any of that stuff?
Yeah, you know what? That was a concern of mine at one point because of the economy in Detroit, specifically in Michigan in general.
Right.
And certainly the longer that they remain irrelevant in the basketball league, the more likely it is that those numbers are going to drop, those attendance numbers are going to drop, and the merchandise and all that stuff begins to drop. But I really see this moving of Richard Hamilton, if it happens, as a very, very good thing.
I agree.
It's a really good thing because they just have a log jam. And it's just difficult. As somebody who plays, still plays ball a lot and talks to a lot of the ballers, it's difficult when you don't have a rhythm, and it's difficult when you don't know what's going to happen from game to game. You can do all the talk you want about just being ready to go, and that's true. But when you're a veteran between Ben Gordon and Richard Hamilton, and you don't know if you're going to play 10 or 30 minutes, you don't know if you're going to take 3 or 12 shots. If you don't know these things at that point in your career, it's unsettling to the entire offensive scheme. And so, moving Rip, now you got Ben Gordon, your prize acquisition from 2 years ago, right? Now he knows without any hesitation that you're our shooting guard. You're getting 15 shots a night. So if you miss, 3, you don't have to look over your shoulder and wonder if Rip's coming in at you, making it even more difficult for you to get rhythm, right? So it frees up that log jam. And I wouldn't want to play Jersey if I was, assuming that they make this all happen. I do not want to face a Chauncey, Rip, Melo, Lopez basketball team with Avery Johnson as the coach.
Yeah, my only fear with that, if it happens, is I think Lopez is overrated. He had a good year last year. He's not been good this year. And, actually Humphries has probably been their best rebounder. It is a much more interesting team. And we also don't know how much Melo is going to kind of snap out of the little funk that he's in. If he gets traded and they give him the money and he's happy, he might just go on a tear.
Right.
And then the other thing is, to me, Hamilton is the guy that I am terrified the Bulls are going to get, because I just think Hamilton's in a bad situation. He's one of those. He's never been the same since they traded Billups. He's a guy that he plays off the ball. He needs his point guard to help him out. And if you're just throwing him on a glorified pickup team, which is what the Pistons are, where they're five guys that are basically like, oh yeah, I guess we're running this time, and there's no structure or anything. That's the worst possible scenario for him. So if he goes to the Nets with Billups, with Melo, and they have the Russians' money, and they'll get they won't win the title this year, but
no, they won't win this year.
Spend some money this summer. I mean, it's
what they become, because there's continuity between Billups and Rip. There's continuity now between Billups and Melo. And Lopez now all of a sudden doesn't have the burden. I agree with you, he has not played that well this year, but I think in large part because so much is expected of him.
Yeah.
I don't think he's overrated. I think he's overburdened. I think if he has some consistent help on the perimeter so that he doesn't have to deal with double teams and making decisions out of those double teams and being forced to shoot when the shot clock is running down because, Courtney Lee or someone, not Courtney Lee, but, Farmer has been drilling the ball for half an hour and then dumps it into him.
Vujicic.
Who?
I was going to say Vujicic.
Yeah.
Vujicic's also playing a lot of minutes for that team, which is never a good thing.
That's never a good thing. So, you gave them, they got the Lakers of the West or the East Coast, I guess. But, if Lopez finds himself in a situation where he's the third and fourth option now all of a sudden you got an offensively talented big man who only has to give you efficient 15 points. That's pretty tough.
You know what else would be interesting? They're not far enough away out of this that if the trade happened the next couple of days, they could get to an 8 seed.
Oh, yeah.
Now all of a sudden we have Miami. Because Miami's probably going to get the number 1 seed. The Celtics just have had too many injuries. Miami's thinking, this is great. We get to beat up on some terrible 8 seed. And now all of a sudden you got the 0-4 washed-up Pistons with Carmelo, who's motivated. Like that, that's not an easy series.
That is not an easy series. And again, not only that, their biggest flaw is big size on the inside. Now you're facing a Lopez, right?
Right.
An offensively talented Lopez, who may not be crashing the boards and killing on the offensive glass the way that D. Howard will, but still you're gonna have to double him. Otherwise he's going to give you 20 points.
I think it's funny that people think the Nets might be giving up too much in this trade. It's like, are you kidding me?
No.
Hey, you're getting Carmelo Anthony. And really, all these other picks, you just never know. They're coin flips. But Favors is the big prize in this trade. I've seen him in person, I think, 3 times at this point. I mean, yeah, he's got a nice, big, athletic-looking body. He had a spin move that I liked when I saw him play, but I don't know if that guy's ever going to make an all-star team. That might not have been a good draft.
Right.
If that's the best piece you're giving up for Carmelo Anthony, you make the trade. And I also think Carmelo, if you're opening a stadium in Brooklyn, there's maybe 8 guys in the league that you could open that stadium with, and he's one of them.
He's definitely one of them.
So it's a great trade. I think they're paying him under the table, though. The Russian. I think the Russian is like, hey, you come here. I fund Lala Vasquez show.
If Lala ends up with her own talk show, then I may start agreeing with you.
What if Lala ends up with her own cable network, like Oprah Winfrey? The Lala Network.
Lala.
Then we'll know something's up. All of a sudden, Prokhorov buys one of those random Discovery channels and turns it over to Lala Vasquez. But
then you definitely know something's up. And if she starts singing back up in Jay-Z's songs and things like that, then you really know there's mess going on.
I didn't even think of that. If she's opening up for him in concert, that would be another red flag.
I really like the idea of Melo being in Jersey. I like the idea of Melo being in the same conference with LeBron James, because while I think LeBron James right now is the best player in basketball still, and if you don't vote for him for MVP, it's because you're holding some kind of crazy grudge.
Yeah.
I feel that the first 2 or 3 years of him and Melo being in the league, that Melo was the better player, that Melo was Rookie of the Year. He's the one that carried his team to the playoffs that year, that Melo was the more polished player, that Melo was being constantly overshadowed by, one, being in the West Coast, and then, two, all the media hype surrounding LeBron, since he's been in the league. And I think being in the East Coast, having to play Bron at the 3, season in and season out, I think would be good for him because it will force him to complete his game, and 2, it will help us see that, you know what, Melo is an elite player. He isn't just a gifted scorer. He's an elite player, and he hasn't necessarily been in an elite player situation.
I do. The character thing for me is the big thing with him because I went to the game last week, and he let the situation get to a point where it just killed that team. And now you could say, well, screw it. They were never going to win the title anyway. But look at the West right now. Who's the favorite? There isn't one. You'd say the Spurs, but the Spurs are old. Who knows if they're going to be healthy in May. The Denver team has talent. They could have gone the other way, and maybe they could have been the team that traded for Rip Hamilton. They basically could have had the entire net scenario in Denver. And Melo in any series, on the West Coast at least, unless he's going against Kobe, is going to be the best player in that series. Right. So, the fact that I don't want to say he tanked it, but his apathy and his refusal to basically commit to Denver in any way, I think it killed that team. And, last night we're taping this on a Monday. Last night was the first time the fans really got on him. And I really think they should have been doing that 2 months ago because, you're making $17 million or whatever he makes this year. And it's your job to play for that team and do the best job you can. And he mailed in last night's game. So, that's the one thing I don't think LeBron. Now you could make the joke about, well, he did it in the Boston series. I don't think LeBron would ever mail in a situation like that. I don't think Dwayne Wade would. I don't think Kobe would. So that would be my one fear with him.
He definitely pouts.
Yes.
You can definitely say that. But with that being said, Denver really hasn't been making intelligent moves.
No.
To surround him with the kind of talent he needs.
The Al Harrington contract was an atrocity.
That was ridiculous.
It was terrible.
And he knows that.
And now they're trying to throw Al Harrington in this trade. Well, you got to take Al Harrington if you just signed Al Harrington, you morons.
Right. They know, and he knows that. He's not crazy.
Yeah.
So, they haven't necessarily. What I would love to see happen, instead of them getting Billups, I would love the fourth team to be Phoenix.
And Nash.
I want them to get Nash out of there, put Nash with Melo and Brook Lopez, and just let the fireworks just explode.
It's not it. I was looking at it because, as you know, I spend 5-6 hours a day in the trade machine, just coming up with fake trades. And there's the Devin Harris piece. Mm-hmm. And you know what, man, if this whole thing falls through, it's going to sound dumb when people are listening to this on Tuesday or Wednesday, but the Devin Harris piece, Denver doesn't totally need because they have Ty Lawson. He's ready to go, be a starter.
Solid.
So they actually have to flip that Devin Harris piece somewhere else, and you could make a case that if they flip Devin Harris to Phoenix, but then then the Phoenix would have to get more than Devin Harris. But there is the foundation maybe where Nash could go to the Nets instead of Billups.
Well, I personally,
I just made my head hurt. My head's bleeding right now. I'm bleeding out of my nose.
Well, the thing that really frustrates me with Steve is that he's one of those guys who, to me, is clearly one of the top 5 guys, 5-point guards in the league.
Yep.
Just clearly. And yet, people are so reluctant to consider him like that. You know what I mean? To consider him like that in terms of, if you were to say, ooh, what if Melo got Nash? People wouldn't start going, oh, my God, that's like a championship team, right? But here's one of the greatest shooters ever. Here's a guy who, regardless of the pieces put around him, has found a way to squeeze in 10 to 12 assists a night.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes, I'm like, Hakeem Ward can't even shoot. This dude just dropped 20.
I think people just assume that Phoenix can't trade him, that it's too big of a hit for them. Ticket sales in the community, like who do you sell on your team now that he's gone? I think people just assume it's never going to happen. And if anything, he's been the anti-Carmelo, because I think Carmelo has spent pretty much since August with the mindset of, I'm going to do everything I can without actually doing anything to kind of push this trade toward the Knicks.
Right.
And the Knicks just don't have anything to trade them. Denver doesn't want Gallinari and Wilson Chandler and a 2014 number 1 pick. And, I think he tried to bluff them and be, well, I'm going to sign there anyway. But I think they're smart enough to know, well, if you sign with them this summer, it's going to be a much different contract than the one you could get.
Right.
And they're smart enough to know that athletes don't leave $20 million on the table. Now, right. Carmelo could have gone one way or the other and said, you know what? Here's my public statement. I will leave the $20 million on the table. I'm going to sign in New York, so you might as well trade me there. But he's afraid to. Kind of half-assed it. And now he's in the situation he's in. Now he's going to the Nets, and it seems like he's just really trying to talk himself into this. But I still think he has his heart set on the Knicks.
I think he has his heart set on keeping his wife happy.
Mm.
If he really, really, really wanted to go to the Knicks, he could have made that happen on his own before he was married, right? He doesn't have to wait till now to try and force this trade with the Knicks.
Well, let me throw this at you, LZ. Couldn't his wife, why does she have to be in New York to be happy? Couldn't she be happy in Los Angeles?
She could be happy in Los Angeles.
Why wouldn't he want to play for the Los Angeles Clippers and Blake Griffin?
Yeah.
Because we have a racist owner?
Well,
is that why?
That doesn't stop the other black people from playing with them. Could I say that out loud? I was just supposed to think that.
Yeah.
It's really difficult to sell a superstar and go into the Clippers because of history.
And the owner who brings women into the locker room to gawk at the African-American players and then says, look at those black bodies. Unbelievable. Every time I think the Donald Sterling story can't get topped, he tops it.
You know what? This is just an indictment of David Stern.
Yeah.
This is just, it just seems like it doesn't really matter what you do within your corporate body. If you're going to fine coaches and owners for criticizing refs, and yet you have found a way to have peace with this man in this league, and I don't know what to tell you.
It's a great point, and I've actually investigated this because it's just dumbfounding to me that Sterling is allowed to continue to own this team. And by all accounts, it seems like once you buy the team, that's it. It's like you've bought a car. I can't if I buy a Mercedes and I run the Mercedes into the ground, Mercedes can't come to me and say, you know what, we got to take that car back. You're doing a bad job. It's bad for our image as a company. I own the car. They can't do anything, and I think that's what is the case here.
Yeah, but the difference is, though, is that I see where you're going with it, but if you take it a step further, if you buy the car, right, and your intentions of buying the car is because you're going to be part of this association of cars that every week, drives through, parades through the city, you're supposed to be washed and cleaned and blah, blah, blah. But whenever you come through, you don't wash your car and the mufflers are screwed up and so it makes loud noises. And so you're a real blemish to the parade. The parade officials and the other car owners eventually should be saying something to the guy who's not pulling his weight. Like, yeah, we know it's your car, but we really don't want to be associated with you if you're not going to follow these rules. And there's got to be something in the bylaws of ownership that says that owners also have to respect the image of the league. And if the players can find a way in the NFL to pressure the league enough in which Rush Limbaugh could be omitted from a proposed purchase team, then I would think that if the owners and Stern really cared about the offenses of Mr. Sterling, they would find a way to put the squeeze on him to either change his ways or let go of the team. And that's, they just simply have not been motivated to do that.
I don't know how much of a legal ground they have. And I also, the X factor here is that Stern is hired by the 30 owners to run their league. So he works for the 30 owners, and he'll be the first person to tell you that.
Right.
It would almost take the other 29 owners to say, we got to get this guy out of here. But if you're one of the 29 owners, don't you want the Clippers in your league competitively? That's the thing. It's like, and yeah, it's kind of terrible, but I think they like having the Clippers. It's, hey, we know that's one team that we never have to worry about trying to win the title.
But it's also the one team that you can't be depending on to help you build your league.
I agree. I mean, I think LeBron would have gone there if the David Geffen thing had worked out and the meetings happened and Sterling laughed and he said, I'm never selling the team, and he never will, and they're going to have to take it away from him. It's the only way. But, if LeBron was in the Staples Center or Carmelo, and you now have two NBA teams in the second biggest city in the country with night after night playing the same building, you have a star in that building. That would have been pretty cool.
That'd be pretty good. You guys could probably, pay for your teachers then and maybe buy some energy.
True.
What is this, 60% healthcare premium increase?
Is that announced today?
California?
Oh.
I saw some. I didn't see the whole story. I saw fragments of it on the ticker on CNN.
Listen, that's a whole other podcast. I would settle for them just fixing the potholes. That's how far behind we are. We just have craters. It's like craters out of the 2012 movie in the streets now, and we can't even fix those.
That dude is responsible for saving your lives, too. You're really screwed up, by the way. I think the teachers are more important.
I would agree.
Just, what you need to do is take the Michael Jackson, estate, sell a couple more, butchered songs of his, and pay some teachers. Educate some kids and say, look, I believe the children are our future, and really believe it this time.
Well, we're just trying to fix the potholes right now.
Are you saying the teachers all fell in the potholes? That's why you don't have them?
We're taking it one step at a time here in California. We can't even, when it rains for 3 days, we can't even get rid of the water. All right, we're at the hour mark, so we're going to wrap this up. LZ Granderson, what are you working on?
Geez, well, right now I'm working on trying to keep up with the Bill Simmons report.
Well, what columns are you working on? Any
right
features?
Now I'm working on a Dr. King column. And it's interesting that we would talk about Sterling because he's a big part of the things that I'm talking about, which essentially is looking at how, one of the byproducts of fulfilling the dream, Dr. King's dream, is that you move away from black and white and everybody starts focusing in on the green.
Yeah.
And I think that is what we're seeing, when it comes to professional sports, is that, it's what decisions that may have been done for the good of the community have given away in a lot of instances to what's good for me. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I think that is, what capitalism is essentially supposed to be about. But the black community didn't get to this place by holding on to those principles of capitalism. They were holding on to other principles. But those principles needed to be held on to because capitalism wasn't a full realization for us at that time. Now it is. Now what? So that's the piece that I'm working on now. It's kind of a anthropological, head-scratching, oh, God, can't this guy ever be happy kind of column.
Right. Well, that sounds interesting. I look forward to reading it. LZ Granderson, thanks so much for your time, and we'll read you on ESPN.com, and this will not be the last time you're on. You've earned a repeat invite.
Sweet!
All right. Talk to you soon.
Hey, thank you.
So I get to sign off. Whoa!
Thank you for downloading the B.S. Report with Bill Simmons.
Too much fun.
Check out more podcasts at the iTunes Music Store or at PodCenter at ESPNradio.com.
Peace out.